Good afternoon.
Just a moment, just a moment.
Oh. And we should be good to go. Good afternoon, world. Hello, internet. This is Steel Media. You are tuned into the PocketGamer.biz Roundtable exploring the opportunities of in-play advertising, which is being brought to you this afternoon by our friends at AdMix. Thank you very much for joining us. We have a full and fun-packed hour with a truly expert panel representing a really broad range of roles, skills, and experience. And this afternoon, we're going to be looking at one of the hot topics in the world of mobile games at the moment, which is in-game, in-play advertising. So in a moment, I'm going to ask our panel to introduce themselves, tell you a little bit more about themselves. But before we do that, one tiny bit of housekeeping, a formal thank you to AdMix for sponsoring this roundtable today. And we are thrilled and delighted to let you know that you will also be able to meet the AdMix team at Pocket Gamer Connect's Digital 7 on July the 12th to the 16th. And as a special thank you for joining us this afternoon and not going out in the sunshine to play, we're offering you all a 20% discount on the event. You will be able to find the link for that in the chat window now, and we'll send it out by email following the roundtable, just in case you miss it. So we look forward to seeing you at PGCD #7 or Pocket Gamer Connect, if you will. Now, on with the show. First of all, I would like to ask our panel to introduce themselves, and we'll kick off with Mr. West. Paul, can you tell us who you are, what you do, and a little bit more about AdMix, if you would, please?
Remember to unmute, always a good trick. Hi everyone, lovely to be on this panel and great to see everyone who's dialing in to listen. My name's Paul West and I'm VP Partnerships at AdMix, which means I am the lucky person who gets to work with the biggest, best and brightest game developers in the world to use our product, which is an in-play ad monetization solution. So we have infrastructure that allows game developers to monetize surface areas, whether it be billboards or walls or vehicles or any surface within the game, connecting the brands to the game developers and helping them generate revenue. So I'm really excited about this roundtable today. There's some awesome brains on this panel, and yeah, share what we've learned from AdMix and kind of explore the category even further, which is obviously booming at the moment. So great to be here, Ryan. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much indeed, Paul. Riley, can we come to you next, please?
Yes. So I'm Riley, and I'm the CEO of Umami Games, and we make hyper-casual mobile games. We were founded in 2019, and since then, of course, we make a ton of games. In January, we scaled our first game like really big, and we made it first on the US charts. We also raised our first seed round, and today we make way more games. So I'm very used to implementing a ton of ads, both interstitial and rewarded, and I am just excited to hear more about other types of advertisement inside of the games.
Fantastic, Riley. Thank you very much. And I think we're going to be picking your brains quite heavily this afternoon. Halar, can we hear from you next, please?
Sure. Hi, all. I'm Çağlar. I run the marketing here at Source Studios. We are a mid-sized mobile gaming studio based in Istanbul and focuses specifically on developing and publishing mid-core genre games, specifically racing simulators. We own the pretty popular Ultimate Simulator series, which has 5 titles right now, and we are also, working on the new titles in the background. And I think that's all. Like my mother always says, always keep it short and tidy. So I leave the stage to you.
Fantastic. We're going to get on very well. Nothing should get in the way of my lovely shirt. Thank you, Hala. And Zaire, can we hear from you, please?
Absolutely, and Ryan, let me just start off by saying nothing is going to get in the way of your lovely shirt now, forever.
I had to do something with the bright orange background.
You did, and you managed. Let me just say, and I think I speak for everyone. My name is Iris, and I'm a business developer from MiniClip. We're one of the largest publishers in the world. As to why I'm here as a business developer as well, we end up talking a lot to a lot of developers, all of whom have their own challenges in whether it's ads or IAPs, in this case, mostly ads. The mobile revolution in gaming has been an amazing thing. And what it's done is it's trained everyone in the world, or nearly everyone in the world, to expect great games for free. So there's always this this tug of war, or this balancing act of how do you create amazing content and get paid for it, because you've got to keep the lights on, in a way that doesn't bother consumers. And I think we've been finding that balance ever since, I want to say 2011 onwards. So yeah, that's me.
Fantastic. Thank you, Zai. And last but not least, Mr. Kern, Oliver.
Hi, everyone. My name is Oliver Kern. I'm Chief Commercial Officer at Lockwood Publishing. We develop and publish a huge virtual world called Avakin Life. I basically look after like the commercial aspects of the game, partnerships with brands, advertising opportunities, sponsorships, all these kind of lovely things. Yeah, that's me.
Wonderful. Thank you very much indeed, Oliver. Okay, thank you all. I think we're going to dive straight into it. And I think because I know we have quite a lot of developers in the audience, and there's a really broad kind of understanding of advertising out there, depending on the background, the sort of the point in the life cycle of the development studios. So can we start with a few definitions? I mean, what's the current state of play when it comes to advertising in mobile games? Paul, let's come to you first. Are we still in the world of interstitial? Is in-game or in-play advertising kind of growing? Where are we right now?
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that there's still category kings of ad formats in rewarded video, whether rewarded video or interstitial video. I think most developers would argue it's pretty king still. I was fortunate enough to ride the rocket ship that was Ad Colony back in 2014, seeing that come into the market and just empower new game genres, which we could touch on hyper casual. I know Riley will be interested to talk about that. Really kind of shifting the industry to that sense and creating a whole new category. So I think that's fair to say that rewarded video is there, but what we've seen, and we conducted a survey with Pocket Game at the end of last year, which showed that the next exciting format is in play. So it really is on the tip of kind of adoption, I would say, and accelerating with growth. Even this year, we've seen significant adoption from major studios, go from testing to fully live. And just to clarify what the difference is and what in-play actually is in-play is natural to your environment of the game. So for example, typically the easy examples are racetracks where you have ads hoardings down the side of the track, or city exploration. So you're driving down the street and you can see a billboard or a big jumbotron or Piccadilly Circus screens. But what we're finding is that talented developers are finding more ways to use this format in new executions, which is pretty exciting for us and opens up the bucket even more. So yeah, I think the current state of play is ready for a bit of disruption. That's why I joined AdMix, because I see it as the next wave. And with market forces, iOS 14 and those things present, that's it's kind of ready to explore those opportunities. So I think that's how I see it, and at least from the feedback we've had is rewarded video, interstitial video, still very reliable and non-cannibalizing formats to in-play. In-play is that little extra bump which could help drive marginal gains over time.
Fantastic, thank you very much indeed, Paul. Riley, I see you nodding along there. So as the hyper casual queen on the table, how have you found in-game versus the interstitial or rewarded video?
Well, I think overall, as a developer, it's every time there's a new form of revenue stream, I mean, by default, that is super interesting. I agree very much with Paul. Of course, interstitial and rewarded videos is still in. We do see a development where, for example, the rewarded videos, you kind of try to the execution to make it more fun. Lately, we've seen instead of just pressing an ad where you can double the coins you made in one level, you can maybe it would be like a little tap timing game where there's a little border that goes over here and over. So maybe I get 4 times the amount of coins I made if I press here, and 2 times I press here. So kind of like making it more playful to have the ad. So that's definitely a direction I see it's going in. Also, we see interstitial now between the levels instead of only at the end of levels. But I think all of it caters to what Paul is saying, like rethinking how you can implement the ads. When Paul started speaking, I was thinking straight away about some of the more maybe female-oriented games, like with makeup, where you're doing a different like face overs and stuff. There it could be super amazing to have like an advertisement for a specific mascara or a specific, like a product you really need. So I think at least in hyper casual, there's a great opportunity since so many of these games are like theme based. So I think it's very interesting to see how one could leverage it more.
That makes a great deal of sense. And Zaire, I mean, you touched on this in your introduction in terms of monetization, in terms of how studios are, rewarding themselves for the number of games played. I mean, Miniclip obviously has a huge legacy when it comes to online gaming. Has the studio embraced, in-play ads? Are you kind of trying to find a balance between the two? How are you finding this new form of advertising?
We're excited to explore, certainly. Like we're in the very initial stages of trying to find out about it, but I've got a good feeling about it. I think there's because I mean, you just heard Riley, and I think there's a reason why our games, the games industry on mobile has consumers who are more engaged, A, with the product, and B, mind the ads less than any other kind of mobile app. It's because developers like Riley spend so much time thinking about how to make it unobtrusive not just unobtrusive for the consumer, for the player, but how to actually make them fun and engaging. And to me, in-game plays, I mean, it's partially that, and it's partially something we know has worked in other mediums, which is product placement. Every audience is different, but I think by and large, the mobile gaming audience is one where, as long as you're not, bombarding them, if it's not a banner ad or whatever, they're open to it. So it's something we're very much in the phase of exploring, but we're interested in.
Fantastic, thank you. And Halar, I mean, this new form, the in-play ads, kind of really lends itself to the games that Sir Studios are doing. You mentioned racing games, so obviously you've got, to replicate the real world, you have a lot of in-play advertising space. Are you guys making use of this?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, maybe like different to the hyper casual genre or any other type of games. The games we have pretty well suited to this format, and like you said, like as the simulator games, we are going after the realistic feel to provide that to this user basically. And when you look at out in the real world, when you are kind of imagining yourself driving around the city, around the roads, and the missing part is those like billboards that you see along the way. And believe it or not, it was the other way around for us. Like we reached out to the market basically to find this type of product. If it wasn't there, we were planning to just make it ourselves, code it into our games on our own. But thankfully, there were already pretty good solutions like AdMix. And, that's why I think it took like a week for us to decide to go forward with this type of, in-play ads. And after going live, what we have realized is that since we have huge maps and like I said, compared to the other games, we have open world games where we give the freedom to the user so that they can, explore around the city. We have like airport sections, off-road sections, port sections, and we pretty much, took the advantage of that. And I wouldn't be like exaggerating, I guess. if I were to say, we bombarded those places with ad placements, because like you said, the more we added, the more, you know, it got to that realistic feeling, and it generated more, you know, revenue for us. So it was a win-win, you know, scenario. And according to the data, we haven't seen any like retention drops or like session length, you know, dove down, nothing like that, because as far as I have experienced, those type of things, when you have the interstitial or rewarded, like the traditional ads, what I like to call them right now, because I believe the, you know, in-game is the next generation for mobile. And I think I don't know, it took a pretty long time for it to be, you know, reached to this stage, because we are actually pretty familiar with this concept from like other platforms, like FIFAs, like Formula Ones, right? You saw those ads, like NBA 2Ks, you saw them in those games, but the push for mobile, you know, reached later on anyways. So we checked the data and we didn't see any changes. But if you were to, let's say, increase the number of, you know, interstitials or rewarded ads, because you have basically, let's, you know, take the hyper casual. I am sure Riley, you know, pretty well knows about this as well. You have around like 6 to 8 minutes of session lengths. Like pretty good hyper casual games have that number. And the lower you can go, like without like disrupting your retention levels and session lengths, it's like around 30 seconds. Every 30 seconds, you can create an ad opportunity. So you have a limited, you know, number of ads that you can like provide, that you can supply. So if you know, go lower that, or if you like increase the number of ad opportunities, you will see the, you know, retention drop. So how it goes, you imagine like a graph, like X and Y axis, right? And you have your ARPDAO. It's a logarithmic curve. It goes like this. And you have your retention. It's an inverse logarithmic curve. It goes like this. And that way you calculate your LTV basically, and you try to find the optimal number, like impression per DAU. And, you know, the more you increase the number of ads that are shown to the user, the ARPDAO, yeah, it goes up, but the retention, you know, goes down. So you reach that optimal number, like pretty, not exactly at the same place, but pretty close to where those two logarithmic curves crosses. But you don't have this limitation with in-game ads.
Mm-hmm. Wow. You know, I think we could just all go for a cup of tea and you can do the rest of the session by yourself. That was brilliant. Thank you so much. That was wonderful. Thank you.
Why we like working with Shalar, because he's switched on in terms of, and helps us learn even more about the product. So
well, this is it. It's all fantastic context. It's all really valuable context. And Oliver, finally, you know, Lockwood are working the kind of the cutting edge of the metaverse. So you guys are recreating a virtual world in a lot of ways. So is this an area of interest to you? Presumably so, but
yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, as Paul mentioned earlier, I mean, the Kings of the Castle still rewarded videos for sure, and interstitials. And, you know, the challenge there is that they basically take the players out of the actual game experience, right? And that's why it hurts also retention, as Carla was saying. So, you know, in-game native kind of ad placements for sure are great for that. I mean, it comes with its own challenges around technology, around kind of contextual targeting and all these kind of things, because obviously, you know, as an advertiser also, you know, it was always easy because everything was performance based, but you know, you know, suddenly it's not anymore, and you're still supposedly paying a game developer like us a lot of money, right? So then it's always the question like, okay, what is the value? And that's, I think, why it's also maybe taken so long. Because, you know, everybody was happy over the last decade to say, like, you know what, it doesn't matter, as long as somebody clicks, everything is going to be good, right? So to say. But that is obviously changing quite a bit, especially on mobile, and at some point maybe also even on the web. Who knows? Once cookies go away there. But yeah, I think there are still lots of challenges ahead. But is it an interesting medium for us? Absolutely. I mean, we've been tackling it a bit more around like sponsorship opportunities and these kind of things, like maybe a FIFA would do, etc., and not so much with like, okay, let's just you know, open a window for some kind of ads. But yeah, I think that's definitely also a very valid way. Yeah.
Fantastic, thank you. And I mean, just in terms of context, that was incredibly valuable. And so I kind of want to follow up with to pick up on a point that several of you made, which is, you know, how do these games monetize? I think many people are familiar with the interstitial, the rewarded ad. You know, people watch an ad, they click through, there is revenue there. With in-game, it seems a slightly less tangible, let's say. So is it kind of similar to product placement? Is it the amount of time on screen? How is this measured? Is there a standard that's being used? You know, I guess, Paul, let's ask you first, and then Hiller, I can see you're itching, so we'll come to you next.
Because I find it very interesting how is the conversion and how like the eCPMs, are they then lower since they're more native, or
Yeah, this is my ballpark. Absolutely can share some learnings what we found here. So absolutely, naturally, because of the non-intrusive nature of this format, you know, it's something that a user can interact with or bypass, not necessarily a clickable placement, as we touched on, which obviously drives performance marketing, where interstitial and rewarded video is still king. That's the main difference. So we definitely see lower CPMs than rewarded video and interstitial, but I think it's quite hard to compare those two together, because obviously they deliver very different experiences for the consumer, but also very different experiences for the advertiser. And that's the kind of the balance I've always got in my mind when I'm talking about both sides of the coin. So in regards to CPMs, I'll speak for AdMix. We have kind of two main channels of advertiser. One that plugs into like the programmatic open marketplace, where we have always on advertisers that can bid for the inventory and compete and drive the CPM up. And then of course we have our own sales team direct, a little bit how Oliver was speaking of sponsorships, where we go into the agencies with, you know, the biggest brands in the world and convince them that in-play is where to be. You know, we used to have a saying at Ad Colony, which I might steal now, which is, you know, mobile gaming is the new prime time. It's where the eyeballs are. To reach the number of eyeballs at a Super Bowl, you could probably do an African Life today. Like it's impressive. So those are the two main streams of how we monetize for the developers. You know, in CPMs, they can really range based on the volume of direct deals that come in, the sponsorships versus the open market. To cut the corners, I would say open marketplace, typically in tier 1 markets, you're looking like between $1 to $2. But then for kind of sponsorship deals or direct deals, I mean, we've seen them be double digits. The difference is they come in waves. They're not always on like programmatic. So it's quite a nice balance, because you have a solid revenue stream of always on but lower CPM, and then you have these waterfall winning higher campaigns that come in and just kind of really accelerate the revenue. And partners work with us in both ways. So that's a bit of context for the monetization, if that helps answer the question, I think.
It does.
Shalar had some knowledge bombs. I could see him like lining up.
Yes, absolutely. Please, sir, if you would enlighten us.
Sure thing. You mentioned like, is there a standard? I think there's a standard. Paul, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's IAB, right? There's this agency which sets the standards for these type of, you know, in-game ads, and there's pretty strict standards where you know, where an like impression, how an impression is counted. Like there's certain time limits, like, I don't know, like 2 seconds, 5 seconds. It needs to be visible to the user's view, that kind of stuff. It needs to be not blocked. So there are standards. That's the first thing. And the second part is like regarding the, ECPMs, basically, like Paul said, it's just, you can place, as far as I have experienced, in play ads between like interstitials and banners. And this is such a product, if, of course, if your game is suited for it, or if you're so creative that you can, find a way to implement this type of thing. But ours was already, they were already pretty well suited. So we didn't need to think that much and be creative with it. So, and we were not using any banners. It was a strategic decision, because I don't know, like, it takes you out of the game. It takes you out of the experience, wherever, how subtle you try to implement banners, it's just there, always there. And like Paul said, there's the always on like programmatic demand, which actually on average, lowers the ECPM basically. But sometimes, and I must say pretty frequently, you get these direct deals. But from what I have experienced regarding the traditional ads, regarding banners, it goes like that as well. Like, you have always on from certain ad networks, but the ECPMs are pretty low, like 30 cents, 40 cents. Sometimes you get, over like $1 ECPMs. But those comes and goes. It's never always on. For example, like Wangle has this type of business model that I know of. They, gather the games inside the company, like, games with pretty high DAUs, and they pitch those to the brands. And then, they get the deals. And once the marketing campaign starts, you see the, revenue rolling. But it's just, for a month or 2 or 3. It's never always on. Then it goes down again, and you wait for the next campaign, basically. So if you were to, like, trade banners with in-game ads for your app, you get the advantage of, getting rid of the banner. So you are increasing the, UX, basically. And I really think, since we have never used banners, I cannot, make a comment on it. But logically, I think it would increase the session lengths. Like, getting rid of the banners, I think it would increase the session length. Although, that also depends on the perception of the user. For example, if a user is opening up a hyper casual game, they basically expect like really high number of ads, like banners and that type of stuff, right? That's why, like Zaire said, they don't mind it, because they are expecting to see such a thing. But our games are simulator games. Like, when we try to increase even a little bit the number of ads that we show, we get pretty bad comments, because users do not want to see them. Our users do not want to see them. So trading the banners with in-game ads, I think it would be, first, wouldn't affect the revenue that you generate in total. I think it would even increase it, I believe, because we have seen like 33 up to 33% like uplift in some tier 1 countries using like in-game ads. And plus you would improve the UX, basically.
Fantastic. Again, what a great answer, and thank you. And so we've looked at this from the user point of view. I'm going to come to the other 3 panelists and ask you for your input as well. Zaire, do you want to pick up on either of the comments?
Yeah, actually, something I was going to say to this point is, I think he's right. It depends a lot on the genre of game, and this happens to be a great example, because people who like simulator games want to be immersed in that simulation, right? That's why they're playing those games. And I seem to remember, and I don't even know if this was on PC or whatever, it was a simulator driving game, and there are many such games who have kind of, they don't have any deals going, and certainly they didn't at that time, who along the road, they have billboards of either actual brands or made up brands, simply because that increased rather than took away from that feeling of being immersed in a simulation. So, you know, there is, and that also goes to what Paul was saying. I think people underestimate, and I mean, not us, I guess, but certainly people from maybe ad agencies, brands, digital media buying agencies, which are, you know, they're still evolving, they're still keeping pace. We have to remember, gaming was this thing for hardcore gamers for 20 odd years, and then it became something for everyone, right? It's only in the last 10 years that the industry absolutely exploded. It's now in every pocket in the world, right? That's the billboard. The billboard is in every pocket in the world, and I'm only slightly exaggerating when I say every, because I think we're up to 3 point something billion gamers right now, and most of them are mobile gamers.
Yeah.
A lot of people in decision-making positions in sort of traditional media buying agencies, even digital media buying agencies, are massively underestimating the kind of eyeballs and the kind of engagement that already exists with exactly the kinds of audience, usually a little on the younger side, that they want to reach out to. So, you know, I'd be, you know, here I'll actually throw this question back at the panel. Like, I feel, and I don't know if anyone agrees, that a lot of this has to do with educating decision makers across the board who are not from our industry. As brands, as digital media buying agencies, as ad agencies, all of that. Because right now they don't know what they're looking at.
See, that's a great point, and I want to come back to that in just a second. So we'll stick a pin in that. Oliver, I'd like to come to you, because obviously when it comes to simulation, you know, you guys are not necessarily simulating, but creating an alternate version. So
well, it's exactly. But it is definitely also in that sense like a real world simulation. So it's also quite natural for us to kind of have either some billboard somewhere or like a TV screen with something on there or these kind of things, right? So it's quite natural to kind of have those kind of placements, and we also would do that with kind of some of our in-house brands, as was described already by Zaire. So you know, it's kind of an obvious thing to kind of make it as immersive as possible. I think that the big challenge for kind of brands to kind of get in that, besides like this aspect, I think they're waking up to that, that's where the eyeballs are. But I think, you know, at the end of the day, for a media agency, you need to make it really, really easy, right? And you know, it has been very easy for them to buy media, right? If it's performance based, they were able to go to Google and Facebook, etc., spend millions of dollars on some campaigns, and then would be able to kind of, based on clicks, kind of do their reporting. On TV, basically, the TV industry has done a fantastic job with giving people feedback on like, okay, you're buying TV on this channel, that's the context, that's the audience that you're kind of tapping into, you know. And then Nielsen and some other companies were kind of building big panels, and you know, as a big buyer, you were able to kind of basically look at like reach and frequency across, you know, your media, etc. And that's something that, in, you know, if they're buying through like AdMix or some other company into some games, it's almost like buying blind, right? They don't exactly know where their ads will appear. Yes, to a degree, obviously, you know, an ad network will provide some visibility there, but it's only to a degree. So I think, you know, if we want this to be a real opportunity, I think, for kind of advertisers, then we also need to kind of think carefully, what kind of information do we need to provide them that they can actually easily buy, right? And that's where kind of there are no real good standards, and it's all like a little bit kind of gray. And I think that's that's going to be, yeah, my belief is that that's why it's taken so long for, you know, companies like AdMix and others to kind of really kind of get to something there. Obviously now the changes with kind of, you know, around privacy, etc., from iOS and then later on from Google will kind of accelerate that, I would hope, because suddenly context matters. But I think there is still a lot of work that needs to be done also from us to kind of make this easier for advertisers.
Again, another great point, and I am going to come back to that in terms of the value to brands and IP owners. But Riley, last but not least, would you have anything you'd like to add?
Well, in general, I think it sounds very interesting, everything. And I agree. I think a great point is, I think Kakla also made it, but that as a developer, it's not about replacing the interstitial or the rewarded. It's that in-game ads can be an add-on to your, I don't know, to the amount of ads, like to your whole like marketing strategy, right? That you can have them as well. I think for us, if we should use it actively, we would have to like assess each game separately. Whether like would they fit in here? Would it enhance the experience? But in general, I think it sounds very interesting.
And I have a quick follow-up question for you, if I may, Riley, which is, so do you have games? I mean, is this a one-size-fits-all solution, or do you have to be quite careful with this? You know, is it either or? You either have interstitial or in-game. Can you mix the two? How are you finding, you know, making that kind of informed decision?
From my perspective,
yeah,
I would definitely do a mix for sure. I think, as Kakla said, actually we're doing it right now, like calculating exactly where to put the interstitial so people churn the least. Like exactly the graph you talked about, that's like a sweet spot where you make the most money and you make the most enjoyable experience, I would say. And I think the in-game ads could fit in very well in between. So I think in hypercash you would see it more as per game. Some games have a natural arena, for example, that would have natural spacing for in-game advertisement. I would probably also use my creativity, as I say, many of these hyper-casual games so theme-based. So, for example, we made a baby game at some point. It's like a whole baby book there. It could be several places, right, where different in-game advertising that fitted for the target audience could be placed. I think if I should place it in, and I'm sure AdMix probably has a solution for that, something similar, some kind of like sparring or like knowledge sharing of which target audience works well for which games and products target audience. I think maybe a question I would have for Paul at some point would be like, what works best, like the free tool where you can just pick different in-game advertisement, or is it more the tailored solution where you join up with a brand? I think the second one, where you kind of join up with a brand, is something at least we have thought about ourselves in our studio too. I think it's very interesting.
Excellent. And Mr. West, you've been put on the spot.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you, Riley. Good question. So in terms of which works best, well, two things. I would advise definitely mixing this in as part of the ad monetization stack. I know everyone was nodding, but just to clarify, like even us who are promoting in-play, like this is an additional benefit to a new layer of revenue. And anyone can do a bad ad integration, even with rewarded video, right? As long as you know your product and your consumers well, which you of course all do, then you'll do a good integration and benefit from the revenue. In regards to which method works best, I mean, it's an open funnel of revenue versus the premium campaign. So the key thing that most of our partners ask us is, can we control the ad content that's coming in? So one of the myths I'd like to bust is, if you're plugging into the open marketplace, how much control do you have on the ads? And it refers back to the question earlier that actually Charlotte answered for me, which was the IAB approved standards of, these are the ad buckets that we will accept into your product and that won't. And most of our developers, have young people who play their games. So they, like you would with Unity, with Vungle, etc., you choose the categories that suit your player base. Those are key to control what's going in. But as long as you're comfortable with the ads that are coming in, which are obviously all premium ads, then I would personally test both, and measure it for yourself. The advertisers bid differently on different products, as we touched on, different games based on contextual targeting and the rest of it, but also the scale of the products as well. So that can be and where the users are whether it's all in the US naturally versus other markets. So the best thing to do is kind of switch on and see for yourself. And if it, you know, if the players react positively and it's extra revenue, it's kind of a win-win from our perspectives. And that's why it's been more and more popular as we go.
Is there any genres you have experienced that works better? Like someone mentioned racing games, for example, or?
Yeah, I would say the games that have been least popular rather than that work better, we've seen like quite across the board perform pretty strong. One of the challenges we have, and this is an advertising challenge in gaming full stop, is violence and shooting specifically. So, you know, most advertisers don't typically want to associate violence with their premium brand. So just as a, you know, inoculate resistance there, if people on the call do have a shooting game, typically you want some form of age gating, which you can pass to AdMix or the provider you choose to say, this is a violent product, 18 plus potentially, or 21 plus, depending on where you are. And then that the network can use that information then to even sell that inventory better for yourself as a developer. So whether it's maybe they're open to different types of campaigns, such as alcohol, for example, then, which would drive obviously a lot higher CPM. So it's very, someone said it earlier, I think it might have been Zara, like it can be quite boutique depending on the product you have, which actually gives it more creativity and more freedom then to, you know, to explore. So yeah, that's a long answer to a short question. Sorry, Riley.
No, that's fantastic, and it brings me to one of my next points, because only today on Pocket Gamer we wrote a piece about a very successful mobile game across Asia and kind of the Eastern Hemisphere, in which we have a very well-known footballer, Cristiano Ronaldo, kind of being a product placement, you know, a playable character or a character within the game, and that's clearly a sort of a battle royale. So yeah, I guess it's very much on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah, I would answer that, you know, I'd say there's genres that fit this product really, really well. And we've talked about some of those. There are products that actually we're seeing such creativity of getting this, for example, hidden object games. I don't think you would expect this format to be in there, but we're seeing success with some partners in that genre that hasn't been done before. I think the biggest challenge would be kind of like, you know, your match 3 casual games. I think that finding a natural fit that feels good for the player and you know, for the advertiser can be challenging there. But those are really the only categories that we struggled in. I mean, hyper casual is the one that's exploding at the moment because impressions per session is a massive KPI for these studios. And naturally, like we touched on, we don't take the eyeballs away from the game. So they're just kind of ambient. Therefore, you can actually put more impressions alongside the experience rather than just going, watch this video for 30 seconds. So yeah, it's that's what I'm quite excited about actually in terms of the next kind of couple of quarters or years. What new creative solutions are we going to see by developers using our products?
Because I'm also thinking, you remember there's in Finland is a company called Future Play, and it's a couple of years ago, but when the rewarded ads came out, they kind of made a whole idle game where they incorporated the ad inside of the core mechanic. So it's a little like game design nerdy, but the thing is, like when there is a game, there's a loop. You keep going around, you keep doing the same thing over and over again. Of course, you add more challenges, so it becomes more like interesting to play the loop. But what they did, they kind of put the ad as part of the loop. And I'm just thinking that could be super interesting to see some different examples of games where one used the in-game advertisement like as part of the core loop somehow.
Yeah, I think
anything that is a bit like 3D type of game, I think, you know, may offer some kind of placement. You know, if you're running with some red figures around the space and there are some buildings, etc., it's quite easy to imagine that, you know, there are some billboards there, and it doesn't feel completely out of place, right? So I think there are definitely also in hyper casual, for sure, lots of things where it's just, you know, a natural kind of extension, so to say, and it's, you know, as has been said, it's like, you know, complementary to the interrupting kind of ads, right? So I think that's great, yeah.
See, now that's interesting. So we've touched quite a lot on the user journey and the user experience and the benefit to them, and we're kind of starting to look at the developer and the benefit to them. I want to kind of flip that and look at the brands. I mean, Paul, you mentioned that, and actually several of you have mentioned, that there's a difference between the programmatic, the stuff that kind of comes through on inventory, and then the sort of the more bespoke deal. Is this opening up new opportunities for brands? Are they taking this seriously and starting to look for specific titles, genres, or audiences, you know, maybe even regional, where they can get that direct connection? Is this really where the next big wave of marketing advertising is going to be seen?
Is that one for me?
For the whole panel, but let's start with you, Paul.
I'll go really quick. Yeah, I definitely think that's happening. I mean, certain market forces have helped that happen. You know, the shift to gaming, everyone knows the explosion that gaming is going through right now, and it continues to rocket the value of the industry, etc. And I think, you know, the brands are really open to creative executions as well. So, you know, what we think of in play right now could be very different to what we see in 12 months. Someone touched on product placement earlier. That's a really exciting idea that hasn't really entered into games at scale yet. I know that it has been done, but Admix is quite excited about potentially being the infrastructure to help power that. But brands are very much open to that kind of idea, in addition to their potentially, you know, more always-on activity of in-play. And, you know, when we think about the agencies that we work with, you know, one of their KPIs and one of their big wins is winning awards, you know, for their client. And this is what a great way to do it, to do something that, you know, is very emerging, top of mind, whether it's branding a vehicle in a game, or whether it's branding, you know, a power up in a game, which obviously makes it work for 2D. I think we're going to be seeing a lot of that over the next couple of quarters, and that's only going to become a more positive attributed experience for a consumer that will kind of self-enrich the economy. So yeah, I won't speak for too long, but that I think that's what's quite interesting from the brand's perspective, that they can shout about, you know, and for the agencies to shout about for the brands, which is a big part of this dynamic.
Of course. Thank you, Paul. And to the other four panelists, I mean, you guys are making games. Have you been approached, or are you looking for kind of brand partners? How are you finding this, the response to this new opportunity? Feel free to jump in.
Quickly.
Yes, of course, Riley, please.
So we did make a game at some point where you fold clothes, like a lot of different clothes. And we were thinking that because the retention was like almost there, but like when you're at 38% day one and you need 40, and like it will not go with the publisher, or like 1 cent above the limit. And we were thinking that could be cool to do together with a partner. But for us as a small developer, the struggle of figuring out how to actually approach someone like H&M or Primark, or like these giant brands, it's like, it was, to be honest, not within our skill set. And we think we would lose a lot of focus on doing that. But I think it's very interesting. I think there's a lot of natural connections between brands, and especially games, mobile games. And from my experience, I mean, brands will go where people are, right? They need customers. And at least if you want to target the youth, like that's where they are all the time.
Of course.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, I mean, I think the big brands have definitely realized, like Gen Z and Gen Alpha is just not in front of the TV. It's not on Facebook either. So, you know, they're definitely struggling to kind of get in front of that audience. And they've also realized that it's not done with just like some pictures or something like that. It needs much different approach to actually really kind of get them behind a brand. So yeah, I mean, we definitely get like quite frequently requests to do something. What can we do? You know, because we are kind of real world simulation, you know, fashion is big, cosmetics, all these kind of things. So yeah, we do get quite a lot of interest there for sure. And you know, it just means we're picky.
Yeah, well, of course, and that's no bad thing. Zaire, you know, given your kind of catalog and portfolio, it's how are Miniclip finding this?
Well, like I said, we're right now we're just interested in exploring the space. I think most people in the game industry right now are more aware, whether it's through direct deals or anything else, and they're more aware of the kind of potential here than some of the brands are. I think Oliver might be right. Some of the bigger brands might be catching on. And interestingly, I mean, I would have thought they'd make for strange bedfellows, but fashion and gaming are probably like they're actually connected better than most other types of brands. And this goes back to, not just mobile games, it goes back to Final Fantasy 14 or 13, I think. And moving forward from there, you had a collaboration with Riot and, I don't want to say the wrong brand name, but, a high-end fashion brand.
I think that was Louis Vuitton, right? Was it not?
It was. It was. I didn't want to say the wrong one and reveal my lack of fashion sense. But but yes, Oliver came to the rescue. I think right now, and Oliver's also right about another thing he said earlier, to go with the point of educating brands. It also, I think we're in the position where we need to make it very simple for them. Riley mentioned we need to, that brands will go where the people are, and that's correct. But there's there's a slight caveat to that. They'll go where they know the people are. They'll go where they know people are spending money. Some of these brands and these ad agents, digital media buying agencies, can be quite set in their way. They can be conservative in the way they approach things. They've been set up to do business a certain way for a long time. And it's not that they don't see, that they don't see, over 3 billion gamers in the world. They want to know what their money will be getting them, right? And that's on us to make clear, and that's on us to be like, how many people from what demographics are going to be, how many times an hour are they going to be driving by this virtual billboard, if that's what it is. So all of this needs to be broken down for the brands, and I think there it's on us as an industry and as individual developers and publishers to do that, because every game again is different. It has different demographics. I believe African Life has sort of a higher percentage of female players than most simulation games do. For example, there's.
But a media agency wants to know it exactly, right? They're not kind of happy with okay, we're going to reach something like X%, right? They want to know it exactly. Fair enough. So we need to kind of find also standards how we can kind of report that. I would argue that a lot of games don't really even know exactly what kind of demographics they have. I mean, we've done extensive research. You guys probably for your top titles as well, right? But for the normal kind of or for a lot of game developers, they're just like, yeah, whatever, people that play my game, that's great. I think it's going to be probably 50-50 or whatever, right? Or depending on what kind of game it is. But somebody who buys wants to know quite exactly what they're buying into. That's why on TV they had like these expensive panels and all that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, actually, I'm not sure if I think part of it is that obviously we want to provide the best data we can, and we want to provide it in the most easily digestible form we can. I would say it's also a matter of them getting used to what a massive medium games are. For example, you mentioned the Nielsen ratings. The Nielsen ratings are based on a relatively low sample size, and while their sampling methodology has become quite sophisticated over time, it's still a sample size, whereas we can not track every user who comes in. In a lot of ways, the data that comes from games is more accurate because it's measuring everyone, as opposed to relying on sampling data. I believe Nielsen had a couple of reworks over time.
Sure.
To try and account for that. So I don't think they know exactly what they're buying there either. I don't think they know if there was exactly 1,001 people who drove by. I don't think they know if there was 1,001 people who drove by a billboard on the road or 950 on any given day. They make estimations all the time. They're just not used to making them for games.
I think this is a great point, and I would like to dive into that if we had a little more time. But Hilar, I want to come to you and give you a chance to kind of answer the last question, and then we've got a couple of quick questions from the audience.
Sure. So I want to quickly say I agree with Zaire there. I am coming from the brand side, actually, before joining the gaming industry. So I know at least a little, let's just put it that way, how the brand managers, mind works. And Oliver is right, and Zaire is right also. Like Oliver is right in the sense that people are aware of the transformation with digital, basically. I mean, there is a saying, if you can't figure out how something works, always follow the money. So if you look at the mobile ad spend data, it was around 276 billion, I believe, last year, and it's expected to be like 341 billion at the end of this year. And like last year, it accounted for 73% of all the digital ad spend and 42% of total media ad spend. And it's projected to be around like 52% of all total media ad spend by 2024. So the numbers are there. Everyone is aware of that. And like Zaire said, on the brand side, on the traditional marketing channels, you don't exactly know anything, basically. Like they said, like Nielsen TV ratings, yeah, it got sophisticated, but they are using, I believe it's called like portable people meters that they have, which has quite a low sample size. So it's these like small black boxes, which takes the audio of what's playing and, figures out what you are playing. But you have like, I believe like the last number was around 111 like million TV households in US. But the number of those devices in the households, I think it's around like 1 million, 2 million, something like that. So they always extrapolate that data. The reason they are hesitant to go for the mobile or gaming channel for advertising, it is just first the generational difference. The decision makers are still from another generation.
Yeah.
That needs to change. And the second one, the reason they are still going for the TV and the other traditional media channels, because they are pretty used to it. They know what they are getting, but it's like the first time always you are hesitant. First time, before first time you are going to do something, you are always hesitant. You don't know the exact like rate of return, that
it's
you
a risk.
get. Yeah, but they know how much they spend, on TV, let's say, how much they would get, but they don't know that, despite the data clearance. And I guarantee you, like the gaming like channel, you can provide much more detailed data, even with the latest like ATT changes, basically, compared to the traditional channels. So I think it will just take a little time for that to change.
Wonderful. Wonderful. I am going to stop you there because we are rapidly running out of time. So 2 very quick questions from the audience. The first one for you, Mr. West, is are AdMix ads available? Let me try that again. Are AdMix ads available in all markets?
Yes, correct.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And what a fast answer. Wonderful. The second one is a little more in depth, which asks about AI and how that's affecting advertising. I don't think we really have time to address it. And then one from Dan, which is, do you think the messages conveyed by the players better, the same, or worse in game compared to before or after the level? So is in-game better than the interstitial? Very quickly, if you would. Yeah.
For delivering an advertiser message, I think there's creative executions to deliver effectively on both. For a consumer, I would say definitely better for an experience because it's non-intrusive and it doesn't take you out of the gameplay loop at all.
Fantastic. And one very quick question, because we have sadly run out of time. So for all of the panel, it's one key takeaway that you would like to leave the audience with. What happens next? What should our audience be looking out for when it comes to in-play ads? And Riley, can we hear from you first?
Sorry, I just have to unmute. I think my takeaway would be creative ways of implementing, both within mobile games, but also when I'm hearing Kakla talk about brands. Now, that's not my background. I come from a game industry background, but like, won't the big brands lose once someone disturbs the market and figures out how this really works? And then it's just way more effective. So I think in general, maybe my takeaway would be like to be aware of what will happen on the market and be more creative than your competitors.
Wonderful. Thank you, Riley. Oliver.
Yeah, I think it is, Paul mentioned that it is always about like creative execution. It needs to kind of fit into your product. you shouldn't try to kind of just put something into it just for the sake of it. You know, if it doesn't feel natural, then there is no way. I mean, I know somebody in QA was asking like about audio ads. Again, you know, it's also complementary. Yeah, if you have a game where audio, you have to switch on audio to kind of play this well. Yeah, then maybe audio ads is a better way. But if you have something that is a bit more 3D, yeah, then maybe like in-play ads are really, really cool, and they enrich the experience. So I think it really comes down to that, and it is meant to be complementary. It doesn't have to take away kind of rewarded
Wonderful.
videos or interstitials or whatever else you have. It's
Thank
like
you.
additional money, really. Yeah.
Perfect. Perfect. Zaire.
Yeah, the collaboration between brands and gaming is going to happen no matter what. It's going to be the first one in. But eventually, I mean, that's where the eyeballs are. That's where the engagement is. It's an absolute inevitability, right? And again, I would agree with Oliver that I think in-play is a good medium to place your bets on. Whether it's in-play or some other medium, it's absolutely nothing, right? So I think that we 100% can expect to see more of. How fast it happens, probably pretty fast. But what's open is what are going to be the first like 100 amazing deals where suddenly, you know, as Dr. is saying, a lot of people are getting replaced in their positions in digital media buying agencies because they didn't think of it first.
Perfect. Thank you, sir. Hala.
Yeah, I mean, like I agree with Oliver there. It all comes down to the integration, I think, as well. Like it's about your game. Like it doesn't even, you know, you shouldn't even differentiate between genres that much, because like blockchain based games, it's about your game. You need to test everything. It's not just for this one in-game ads either. Like everything, you need to just test and see the results yourself. I have many friends, you know, in the gaming industry. I never take like, you know, like, of course we talk a lot, but I never take their solution and apply it directly to my product, because it doesn't work that way. So you need to, you know, test this, figure it out yourself, and, you know, make the decision whether it works for you or not.
Wonderful. There is no one size fits all. Perfect. And finally, Paul, can we leave the last word to you?
I would just, I think Oliver and everyone else said the same thing. Like there's an education piece that still needs to happen on the brand side, even on the game developer side as well. You know, in-play is an old idea, but the new technology that powers it is kind of meaning that it can accelerate. So this is something that's quite exciting, and that's a big part of what AdMix is trying to do is share what we're finding out. And the curves are great. So if anyone has any more questions, visit AdMix Play and just check out the case studies. We're very much about, you know, showing what happens to retention and showing what happens to ARPDAO and those kind of things. So yeah, if you have any questions, of course, come directly.
Wonderful. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. I think it's been an absolutely fascinating hour. We could have gone on for at least another 2, but I will spare you that because it's a lovely Tuesday evening. So I would like to thank you all, Halar, Zaire, Riley, Paul, Oliver. Thank you very much indeed. Ladies and gentlemen, people in the audience, we really appreciate your time. And if you've enjoyed this afternoon, please don't forget that after this roundtable in association with AdMix, you can join us at Pocket Gamer Connects Digital number 7, where we'll be covering similar topics and much, much more. And there is that 20% discount that you can find in the chat window, and we'll be sharing with you. So it only leaves me to say, folks, thank you again. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I look forward to catching up with you again at some point soon. So thank you very much indeed, and goodbye.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks, guys. Talk to you soon.
Thank you.